What is up, YouTube, and welcome to this Last Night in Soho movie breakdown and ending explained. This was my most hyped movie for the year behind Dune. And well, it is because I have watched Edgar Wright's career since almost day dot from when Spaced first aired, sneaking in to see Shaun of the Dead when I was underage, and being furious that he left Ant-Man. I mean, come on, he and Joe Cornish would have made the greatest MCU movie of all time. It's been a while since his last movie, which was Baby Driver, and history has not been kind to that flick and its cast. And well, he's back with this not quite love letter to the swinging 60s of London. If Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was Tinseltown shown through a rose-coloured tint, then Last Night in Soho is London seen through a dark and dirty mirror in a basement of a Soho pub. The swinging 60s is not something that is shown on screen that much these days, despite, well, it being the heyday of almost British culture, apart from the Britpop revolution in the 90s. It was a wild time in the UK as they're coming out of the post-war slump, and it was finding its voice against the increasing Americanization monoculture, which we lost, I guess. The movie here could have easily been all over the place with a sort of goodnight sweetheart-esque storyline. That's a TV show you have to be from the UK to understand, mixed with the supernatural and jump scares, while also being a period piece in the 1960s. I do think and blame Austin Powers for the reason why we don't see many British 60s movies these days. Now, it meshed together very, very well. I guess the identity of the landlord from the off, but I didn't actually predict she would be a slasher of Johns. The mesh of modern day and the past worked very well, along with the portrayal of a metaphor of mental health and the bleeding of what's real and what is not, as well as the opposite but same relations of Sandy and Jack and Eloise and John. How ironic, Sandy stabbed John, a name for the solicitors of ladies of the night. They are two relationships which are the same, like I said, but they are very different, as while they were both having people introduce one to London, one went a bit better. Now, of course, not to mention the soundtrack is stunning, which builds upon Edgar Wright using music in his movies very, very well. And I don't think he had a movie that had music that much in it until Baby Driver, with its money shots of Brighton Rock by Queen, which is just exquisite. The key song here is Downtown by British singer Petula Clark, and Anna Taylor-Joy has done a fantastic job covering a down-tempo version of that. You can check it out on YouTube. As well as this, we had You're My World by Cilla Black, the legendary British 60s icon, but hey, I and probably many people my age are more familiar of her from the iconic 90s show Blind Date. Now we open with 60s obsessed Eloise, and if you recognise her, yes, she was one of the grown-up people in Old, but less said about that movie the better. She's been accepted into the University of the Arts in London, and she has a gift not only for fashion, but she sees ghosts, which is acknowledged by her nan, but never really explained why. I'm kind of glad they didn't go deep down into this and bog us down with what fors and whys. Her mother was also into fashion but took her own life. It's an interesting one, and I wonder if her mother did have the gift in secret and was overwhelmed by London just like Eloise. Now she soon learns that, well, London sucks. Yeah, it does. And people at university and art schools are stuck-up twats like Jocasta, and all I could think of when I heard that name was the female robot made by Ultron. She rents a bedsit after dipping in the middle of the night, unknowingly from Sandy, the woman she is about to be obsessed with. At night, her powers activate, and I would imagine due to the sheer amount of people killed in that room. She's taken back to the peak of Soho through the eyes of Sandy, aka Alexandra Collins. And the way this movie is shot is nothing short of just visual bliss. She arrives at Café de Paris, which has hosted the Names of Names since the 20s, but is sadly now closed in real life. She wants to be a singer and, well, this matches Eloise's desire to make it in London. She walks down to the music of Cilla Black and meets Jack, played by Matt Smith, and it was so good to see him on screen again. He was great, of course, as Doctor Who, where, well, who doesn't think he was good? And as well as that, he was also superb in The Crown. Jack is a sort of kind of manager fixer for these women as they have a whirlwind romance, as she is willing to do anything to make it. I also liked how she ordered a Vesper Martini. Yes, that is the drink of 007 himself, which she no doubt got inspiration for after walking past the Thunderball poster in that jaw-dropping shot. Now, Eloise is living vicariously through Sandy, but it all goes wrong when later she's an update of Sandy's life and she is being pushed into prostitution at the promise of, well, this is how you make it in the world. Eloise's breakdown goes hand in hand with these visions as she becomes more and more disturbed by what's going on. While the first man did not look like a ghoul, later men who did sleep with her had their faces blacked out because not only did Sandy kill them, but she also blacked out their faces in her own mind. This is important as the visions are not 100% reliable, and this is telling us that, as the person whose life Eloise sees can change based on the subject. This is why when John actually comes to hers and Eloise sees Sandy die, it was the moment her younger self died. It was a metaphor, and she went on to kill more men and hid them, which is why so many men went missing in Soho, and these were the articles that our girl saw in the library. However, as Eloise sees Sandy die, she thinks that Jack did kill her and is adamant that the elderly man she has seen multiple times is Jack himself. However, this was actually Lindsay, one of the men Sandy saw, who was a policeman who urged her to get out of this life. There were many clues this wasn't Jack, as he never answered to that name whatsoever. She was screaming at him and he just ignored her. He said that he would help the ladies around Soho and knew them all. He also never spoke like someone who managed girls to get into prostitution, and in his last scene he said how he returned to London to look her up. It was also mentioned how the toucan was frequented by police, which explains why he went there so often. It's also after this the reveals are dropped as she asks John to help her leave London once he's killed. Here Sandy is revealed to be the landlord all along. We never saw her room with the portrait, and we would later learn that she killed each one of the men she saw, which is why they are stuck in the room. Diana Rigg was perfect in this role, and there's no better person to actually be in a 60s throwback movie, as she was a Bond girl and was in one of the most 60s shows of all time, The Avengers. She will be sorely missed, and I'm gutted that she will not be on our screens anymore, but man, she was so good as Olenna Tyrell. Now, Sandy then explains due to the police sniffing around, she's going to make it look like Eloise killed herself, which people would believe, only for John to try and save the day, but she is a tough cookie, chasing Eloise up the stairs as the vision blended into one. The ghost can only be free when she dies, which Eloise refused to, but the place burns down anyway. After this, we have the end of term fashion show, and she sticks to her guns of reviving the 60s and sees Sandy in the mirror, just like her mother. It seems like she can still see people who made such an impact of her life. Overall, I thought this movie was superb and a lot scarier than was originally made out to be, with some stellar performances from the actress who played Eloise, and Anya Taylor-Joy really understood the assignment here. So that is it for this video. Please drop a like down below, do subscribe with notifications on, and I'll see you soon, and goodbye.